Hi everyone, Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be looking at using some online prompts for inspiration, and this is the prompt that I was using. It's from the Mission Inspiration, which is Mike Deakin's Facebook page. You can go and find out there, the address down the bottom, Mission Inspiration, if you look that up on Facebook. So this is his listing ingredients to use on the page. Stamp a pattern, scrape paint across your page, add small paper shapes, make holes, draw faces, add one word as focal point, add journaling, add something metallic, and use the colour inspirations of coral, mint and craft. Now some of the words you use for inspiration are vision, grace, root, time and sacred as well. So I find finding things like this are great jumping off spots for when I'm really stuck. And I've been having a bit of a moment in my journals recently. Some of the pages I've been creating are really simple, which I love, but it's sort of not my wheelhouse. It makes me feel a little bit like I haven't done enough. But I've also been traveling as well, so I try and do this daily, and as you know, if you do things daily, you sort of get yourself into a habit of what you're doing. So getting out of that routine, it takes me a little while to sort of get back into it again. So having an online prompt or a recipe ingredient sheet like that took the guesswork out of it. I didn't really need to think, I just needed to follow the prompts, and when an idea started to take shape, then I could play with what was happening. So I'm just starting off my journal, gluing down my text. So these are all sorts of different bits and pieces. These are vintage pages I've got from a book, some old encyclopedia pages, all sorts of different bits and pieces. And this was the torn into small shapes. I was a little bit loose with the inspiration, I have to say. I didn't necessarily follow it exactly, but I did follow the recipe as much as possible. So now I'm just going in with some gesso just to blend in the background to make it sort of all look similar. Now one of the main reasons I did this was because I had a canvas page on one side and a cotton rag page on the other. So the canvas has a different consistency to the cotton rag, and I wanted to have some kind of unity between the two pages. I'm just going in with a big stencil and rubbing off some of my gesso so I could see some of the background text again a little bit better, but you can sort of see now it ties the page together somewhat more than it was in the background. Now I'm just going in with my heat gun to heat set it. It does take a little bit longer to dry paint on the canvas. The reason for that is it's a material, so it soaks up the moisture and it takes longer to sort of dry it. But because I had the coat of matte gel medium in the background, it did sort of seal that somewhat, so it took less time than it usually does. So now I'm going in with the colours of the challenge, which was mint and coral. I didn't go with any craft. If I'd had the craft pages in my journal still, I would have used that, but I didn't, so I thought the sort of brown of the vintage text in the background might cover that and the craft. To make the mint colour, I mixed some aloe and some lime green from the Dina Wakley range, and this is her blushing colour. I'm just scraping it across the page using silicone spatula, because one of the challenges, of course, was to scrape some paint across your page. So again, it's not something I do very often. As you know, I've got a pathological fear of white space, so scraping paint sort of gives you a lot of white space. But I was actually quite liking how it came across, and it's not a colour palette I use very often, I have to say. So that was great to sort of push me outside of that comfort zone. While I was waiting for the paint to dry, I'm obviously off finding something else. So I was looking for the collage faces from Dina Wakley, I think, and some stamps that I could use in the background, because one of the other ingredients was to put some patterns in the background. So I decided to continue with the mint and coral, and use my Distress Oxides in those two colours. So I think this is Cracked Peacock and Abandoned Coral that I'm using, and it was really funny because I thought I'd mixed a really nice mint green, and then I saw this colour and it's like, oh, it's probably needed a bit of blue in it. But I kind of like the contrast of the two mint green colours on the page. And as you can see, I'm manfully trying to fill up any white space that I have by filling it with stamped images. So I really like these texture stamps, or any sort of Mike making texture stamps. And these ones from Dina Wakley are fantastic. I just like the chunky nature of them. I did choose to use these circles because one of the prompts was to cut some holes in your pages, and I was briefly thinking for a second that I'd actually cut some holes in the the right hand side page, because I actually had artwork on the back of the left hand side page and it wouldn't allow me to cut through it. In the end I didn't, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. When I finished, it would have looked funny having holes in it, but I feel bad that I didn't actually use everything that was in the list that I was supposed to use. But as these things go, they're just to get your inspiration going. So I'm going in now with the random text or journaling in the background, or illegible text in the background. And I thought I'd just stick with this. This is a stamp using Dina Wakley's, I had the word on the tip of my tongue, it's not asymmetric, asemic writing, which is basically illegible writing. But then I actually decided that I was going to journal over it. So I love, out of all the faces in the face collage sheet, this is probably one of my favourites. And I haven't actually done this before, but I really love this technique where I actually cut the image in half and use both sides of the image but on different sides of the page. One of my pet peeves with collage papers, however, though, is the white halo. So I like to trim up nice and close to the edge of my collage pieces, just so I can get as little halo as possible and make it look as much part of the page as I possibly can. So I just use some thin scissors. These are Tim Holtz small scissors that I can do some fussy cutting with. So you can see there, just having those two images, they look like two completely different images, even though they came from the same face, and they just really frame the sheet. So I'm just going in with some gel medium, being quite generous with it, just sort of painting it all over. Again, you do need to be aware that I did stamp with Distress Oxide in the background, and obviously that's water reactive. So by putting the gel medium over the top, I've reactivated that, and you can see the images smeared slightly. So I've gone back in and heat set it just to try and prevent as much as possible, and I'm going to do the same again, except on this one I'm actually going to paint the gel medium onto my collage sheet and transfer that on, and then put some over the top, and that prevented that loss of definition that you can see on the other side. So adding some gel medium over the top just to sort of seal over it. You can really see the difference between them in the two top the left hand and right hand corner at the top where the definition's left. So once I've dried this page, now I'm going to go in with some journaling. And to journal, I'm just using a food ball, I think, to journal down the middle of the page. I'm not sure if I really liked this step when I was finished with it, but one of the ingredients was to add your journaling to it, and I do feel that it's called art journaling for a reason. So I decided to just write. So I was writing about sort of how I was feeling about being blocked and what it was, what this process was doing for me. So really loose, really big letters. I can't read it back again. I probably could if I sort of went up nice and close to it, but I certainly can't read it on screen. But just making it look really, really scribbly. And one of the things I found is if you make really big up and down strokes and loopy Y's and so on, and sort of overlap them with other letters, it makes it a little bit more unreadable. Now, I like doing this because it adds texture to the background and it adds shape and pattern. I don't worry about my handwriting being neat or not neat. that sort of doesn't come into my head. I just think of it as pattern. And I think doing that sort of takes that block away of, oh, I don't like the look of my handwriting. So I do encourage you to have a go at writing all over your page and making it your own. Once I'd finished doing that, I decided I want to put a little bit more colour in. So I'm going back with my Distress Oxides and just stamping some images over the top. Again, I'm not worried that it's going over my journaling, because by just writing it out, I've got it down the page. I don't need to go back and revisit it, it's there. And I'm just going in and heat setting it. One of the other final things was to add something metallic and shiny. So I'm just going in with a Distress crayon in bronze, antique bronze I think, to add some metallic shimmer, and I'm also going in with one of the pinks, sort of corally colour, for some eyeshadow and a bit of shape on the lips. And when I'd finished that, I'm going in with my white Posca paint pen on the eyes. I tend to do that with my collage faces a lot, because by drawing in the eye, it just immediately draws your eye to it. I wasn't particularly happy with those pink lips, so I decided to go in with the coral paint pen just to make them sort of stand out a little bit more. So once I'd finished that, one of the other things that needed to be on the page was a focus word. So I chose to use these collage quote chips from Tim Holtz, and I like the word curiosity, because the writing in the background was all about creativity and curiosity and how to sort of foster that. Because I'm a school teacher, I love teaching about art and being creative, and how to sort of instill that into kids. It was a long rambly tangent in the background. It's what happens when you just start writing. So I've peeled off the top layer of the chipboard and stuck that into my book. And I did put the other quote down there, dwell in possibility, because I thought those two words worked really well together. So this is a close-up of both pages. It was a really fun experience using the recipe, and it's something that I encourage you to do. If you ever get stuck, just look up online for lots and lots of different prompts and challenges that are around that can inspire you. I know we're going into May and mermaids starting, so if you're interested in mermaids, that's a great place to start. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.